It's now my real pleasure to introduce tonight Kerry Oldman and Victoria Mauala, who are both at St Cuthbert's College in Auckland. Kerry is head of the junior school, and Victoria is a Year 3 teacher and is the IT and innovation lead at the college. And just as a point of reference for everyone, the junior school in this instance refers to the primary school, so years 0 through to 6. So to start off the discussion tonight, I just wanted to ask you both about what your philosophy or overarching approach has been during this period of online and distance learning.
Thank you for having us as well. It's amazing to be able to get out there and support different schools around New Zealand and hopefully even further afield. I think that's for us the most important thing has been about wellbeing, the philosophy of this is a new entity. It's not been done by anybody, any schools under a pandemic. So it's a new thing for everybody, and just understanding that we need to look after our staff and our students and our families. That's probably been the most important thing and underlined everything that we've done. And then sort of further beyond that, it's been the teamwork, the preparation, making sure that people collaborated together. We also had some amazing research that's come from international schools. Hong Kong, we had YCIS really get behind and support us. We sort of followed their lead as well, which I think having the whole world work together in something so new has been really helpful. So the big overarching approach for us is really having those consistent messages, going to the parents, going to the teachers, and everybody being on board together, and only do what you can. I think we've heard over and over again, particularly in our first couple of weeks of online learning, it's too much from parents, the pressure's too much, we can't cope, we don't know how to be teachers at home, and kind of giving that message over and over again, just do what you can. We're not asking you to be the teacher in the home, we're asking you just to be there as a support for your child. Vic, is there anything from your side that you think has been a philosophy in the teaching?
Yeah, I think as a teacher, you've said it all, Kerry, it's kind of filtered down, definitely that teamwork, viewing I think that's probably the strongest thing from the teaching staff, is that we've turned into sort of more of a year level rather than classes. So, for example, I'm with Year 3, and our planning's all in sync, so it's a real team and collaborative environment. Exactly what we were doing in school and in the classroom, probably just even more so, purely because we're all of us are paving the future, and this has never been done before. So leaning heavily on each other, and that collegiality has been a huge help, and also knowing that the parents, as Kerry said, know exactly what is expected of them, what the girls expected of our students, and knowing that they can trust that in the communications from the school.
Brilliant, thank you. So lots of ideas in there that I'm really keen to unpack. I guess one of the first things that I'm really interested in is you talk about the importance of teamwork and working as a year level and really making sure that you've got that really strong collaboration. At a very practical level, how have you done that when you're obviously all working at a distance?
With my colleague in Year 3, my co-teacher, we've basically set up our day starts at 8, and we'll go into our structure of our day in a little bit. But so the other teacher and I will Zoom at 8 o'clock, and just set up our day, go through what we've got planned for the day, kind of have a morning reflection. Pretty much what we do in class when we touch base with each other before the students come in the mornings, and then during the day, again, the way our timetable is structured, we'll be checking in with each other, constant messages or Zoom chats. Often we'll be like, hey, have you finished your lesson? Let's jump on and chat, and oh, that worked, that didn't work. So again, everything you're doing in class, it's just probably under a microscope and a little bit more intensive being with the remote learning and in the situation that we're in. So we found that really helpful, just the constant check-ins and messages, and but that's also across the whole staff, not just obviously with my year 3 co-teacher.
And I think from a management point of view, we have made sure that we've had a debrief every day. We've been using Zoom as our main way of connecting with each other. So we, at the end of every day, we've debriefed. For the first 2 weeks we did that, and then beyond, it's kind of turned into just twice a week that everybody's expected to be there. And we've made sure that the planning is done pretty much, 5 days in advance, so that everything's there. I've been able to go in and look over the planning. The deputy head has been able to go and look at the planning. So everybody's worked as a team to make sure everything's there on time, so it runs as smoothly as possible. I think it's really easy to panic in these situations and last minute, I want to change that, or I think you just have to go with the plan. You have to make sure that you're well prepared. It's a bit like going back, I think I've talked about self, and it's like going back to being a beginning teacher again. It's all new, it's that over planning, over preparing, and by doing that, the week flows far more easily.
Definitely, and those debriefs at the end of the day have been super helpful for teaching staff and support staff, purely because if you've got a question, an urgent question, well, you can obviously get in touch with our management team, but knowing that you've got a forum to discuss it, especially in those first 2 weeks where everyone's, you are paving the way, you kind of got muddling along, and I think we did really well with that.
And one of the things that I know a lot of people have been talking about is that when you shift into an online or a distance learning environment, you can't get it through as much content as you ordinarily would. You've got to really reduce what it is you're focusing on. And you had the really lovely phrase of only do as much as you can do. How have you thought about how you prioritize the learning and what you want to focus on?
That's been a process as well for us. We started by thinking we could we blocked our timetable to start with, and I'm happy to share that with you. We created a timetable where we shortened everything and we put it into 4 blocks, and we're in the luxurious position of having specialist teachers, and I know not every school has that. So we made everything shorter. We had 40-minute blocks, and then had more breaks and quite a long lunch break, so that the girls and the children could run around and be as free as they could be and exercise a little bit. But by actually breaking everything down into these shorter blocks, it made it far. Gosh, I've lost my train of thought slightly on being able to create a system for them to work to. And then by the end of it, we actually had particularly our younger girls, year 1 and 2, it just became so disjointed. The parents in particular sort of fed back to us, and they said that they were watching their clock all the time, trying to make sure they were back online at the right time to do a Zoom session. So we made sure that, particularly for the younger ones, it became just your core subjects, your maths, your English in the mornings, and then those more free STEM subjects art in the afternoon. So it made it far more easy for those younger children to cope with the at-home timetable.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And Kerry, I might ask you, I know you've got the structure of your school day up on a screen that you'll be able to share with people, so I wonder if it might be useful to give people a bit of a context for how you are thinking about the structure of your day and how you actually are planning that out. Just before you do that, I would remind everyone that if you do have any questions, please do share them via the chat function.
Absolutely. So I've kind of put a few examples together that I can share with you. Let's see how well my ability works here. So this kind of shows you a blank timetable. This shows you how we put about our day, and this actually was supported by some help I had from people in Hong Kong international schools who started obviously way ahead, and we basically blocked it. Originally we knew we were going to use Zoom, so we knew we had 40-minute slots. We ended up paying the premium for Zoom because we realised how important it was going to be. But you can see there that we've got a registration time, and we've tried to keep the routine as close as possible to our regular day. The girls it'll be boys in your case as well, come online at 8:30 and they just check in with their teacher just to see a face. It's nothing over the top, it's just checking in, seeing their friends. And for us, a really important thing has been that connection, keeping that connection with their teacher and seeing their friends at school. You can see we've blocked it out into 4 main blocks, and then our final block at 2 o'clock in the afternoon is more of a Q&A time, and it's just a chance for them to get back on and just relax with their friends. The first couple of days were definitely all about expectations of being online at home and what the routines were going to be and what we expected of them. But that gives you a brief overview of how our week looks. And I've kind of also copied this was our last week, obviously. Thursday and Friday were Easter, we weren't around, but you can see that the girls can see who their links to jump onto with their teacher for their Zoom sessions. This is when we'd changed, in particular for year 1, they would have their maths at the same time each day. They would have their literacy at the same time every day. They'd know when to click onto Zoom links, and then more specialist opportunities in the afternoon. We also linked with that, and I'll quickly show you now, a home learning menu. So the girls also had a menu that they worked from, which went side by side with this. If I was to show you our year 1 menu, you can see here we kind of created it in a user-friendly way for parents. We had our starters, mains and desserts, and you can see from this that the starters are all tasks that the girls should be able to do without the guidance of an adult or without too much guidance. The mains require some adult support, and the younger the girls obviously need, we know that they need more support. And the desserts are supplementary activities, and you can see year 1 have created their independent activities, subject-based. We found that there were some families that were finding it really tricky to be online at the right time every day, and so they knew just to use this independent activity menu as a substitute, so they didn't have to be online. Again, I mentioned over and over, just do what you can, and if they couldn't be online the whole time, then we'd make sure that they could cross over into this menu instead. The mains are a little bit more detailed and they need more support, and we've made sure that these all go out in advance to the parents, so they see the whole week ahead and they're not floundering every day as to what they're doing. They know in advance the different things that they can do with their children. And then you can see the desserts there, which are the supplementary activities, and we ended up adding on our specialist kind of lessons of our music, French, and PE as well. Obviously, as you go through a bit further, jump in anytime, Vic, but as you get through to the older girls, you might need we developed it slightly more, and we gave advice on how long all of these activities should have been. It became a little bit more independent for the year 6s, for example. You can see here they can kind of guide their own learning and much more easily. So that's pretty much our model, really. We had our weekly timetable, and then we had this independent menu that they could chop and change between the two.
Yeah, and I think setting it up, going back to how do we know what to prioritize? Well, for the first week, it was basically learning how to be in our online classroom. So we took the pressure off actually necessarily teaching maths, reading, writing in a way, merely and just getting the girls, the students to understand how to behave online. It's our new classroom, what the boundaries were, the etiquette being in a Zoom meeting, and working really hard at that, and also knowing where for them to find that home learning menu for us. And so that's what we prioritised initially. And obviously that's constantly evolving. You go week by week at this stage. We don't know how much longer we're here for. So obviously the intensity, probably the expectation of our ourselves is probably starting to ramp up a little bit more, in the sense of like, yeah, okay, we've mastered this, what's the next step? And making sure, again, we're doing what we can do, and for everyone that's totally different, and supporting each other into kind of scaffolding into the next step of how we can further make our online classroom more like our in-person classroom with limitations.
Yeah, fantastic. We've got lots of questions coming in about what you've just shared with us. What I'm thinking I might do is just run down a couple of the main questions that have been asked, and then you can think about how you want to answer them, and some of them will be quite quick, others not quite so quick. So we've got a question around, in your 40-minute blocks, how much do you actually try to get through? How you balance spending time online versus time offline, and sort of how much of the learning happens on a computer versus not on a computer. How do you monitor children's engagement in the different learning activities, and are you providing feedback on those? How does that process work when they've got that lovely menu of different options? Hang on, I'm just checking whether we've got anything else. Oh, and then we just had one question about whether with the classes, obviously you're running the Zoom sessions as a whole class. Do you always keep those whole class, or do you use any of the smaller group functions within Zoom as well?
Amazing questions, really amazing questions. I'll start off, and you might have to jump in again to remind us of some of those questions. The 40-minute blocks, we went in, and again, this is new to everybody, and we started as the teachers went in there to begin with, thinking that they would have their literacy lesson and they would be there for the whole 40 minutes. And we worked out pretty quickly that there were some girls sitting in the classroom twiddling their thumbs because they understood the content of the lesson, and they understood what was expected of them. So within probably, it took a while, but within 3-4 days, the teachers were then able to introduce the lesson, talk them through it, and then either send them off to an independent activity. We have some learning assistants or support teachers, depending on the group of children in our lessons, and so sometimes we would use the breakout room, so we'd be able to put a group of girls, if it was reading, for example, guided reading, and they would go and work with a learning assistant in a breakout room, and quite more often than not, they would be able to go away, and that's when the Q&A session was so pertinent and so helpful at the end of the day, because if there was anything during the day that they really didn't understand and were frustrated with, they kind of were taught to just leave it. The same way that we would teach them to be resilient in a lesson, we would be teaching them to be resilient online at home. Just leave it, don't panic, don't worry, try again, and if you still don't understand, you've got that time at the end of the day to come back and talk to your teacher about it. Sometimes teachers would stay online, and that they'd turn their camera off in that 40 minutes and just say, I'm here, if you need to come back, you can come back and ask a question. But from my experience, and Vic may tell you otherwise, it made far more sense to give short, sharp instructions at the beginning and then send them off to do the activity.
Definitely. I think that's something that in year 3 we've certainly refined. When I think back to our first initial lessons, it was that expectation of thinking, oh yeah, I'll have a 40-minute Zoom, that's what the girls, that's what we need, is that contact. In actual fact, especially with year 3s, it was not what they needed. Short, sharp instructions, like Kerry said, get in, give it to them, get out, basically. And that's where the home learning menu is just so great, because we're always tying the lessons into that. So we might jump on, give them the instructions, go through the home learning lesson, especially with year 3s, they need a little bit more scaffolding, I think, than obviously, I'm in the middle. So either way, you're going to need a little bit more and a little bit less. And then those girls, and this is what we got, and the girls were getting really good at it, is that we'd get to a point and say, right, if you've got a question, stay behind. Everyone else, you can leave the meeting. And then the girls they were like, are you sure? Can I leave? Yes, that's totally fine. Like, you go off. If you know what you're doing, go on. And so generally we got to the point in the last week of term where a huge proportion of them would be like, yep, sweet, I know where to find it, I know what to do, off I go. And then a couple would stay back, and with supporting students, I did sort of shoulder tap a few more that might need a little bit more support and say, hey, I actually got in touch with their parents and said, feel free for them to stay behind. If I say everyone can go, they are welcome to stay on. If they know what they're doing, sure, go for it. And as Kerry said, we just sort of sat there for a little bit longer, see if anyone needed any help, any extra support. And most of the time, I would like to think that they didn't come back on because we've pitched the activities at a good level for them to be able to do independently. And having the Q&A times, awesome, because the girls would touch base and ask questions, and they their parents, we asked the girls to get their parents to email their work to us. So we'd sort of get them scattered throughout the day of their work. So I could see if there was anyone who really needs some help with anything, or needed some feedback and where to go from there, basically.
And I think that kind of covers a bit of the online versus offline as well. I think, we're desperately trying to not let them have too much screen time. We are aware that this is an unusual situation, and we don't want them to be on the screen all day, every day, particularly the really young ones. They, by the end, you're probably finding it yourself in your own schools, they're exhausted if they're on the screen, even for half a day, they're shattered. But we've kind of left that to the parents and what they're doing in their home. We're there. We're offering as much as we possibly can, and we've tried to tell them not to put the pressure on themselves to get everything right, because they won't. But we just want to be there as a support, and that they know that we are there as a staff body, as a teacher, as a parent body, that we can all communicate together. And I think that has been really helpful with the whole community within the school. Everybody feels that they are supported, which it's important. It's a new situation, and we all want to feel that we're okay doing what we're doing. If the parents don't want them to be online the whole day, they don't have to be. The independent activities are there for them, so they can pick and choose how and when they do them. Some of those independent activities are specific to a certain lesson, but most of the activities that we use in our independent learning menu are enrichment of what we would want them to be doing in class anyway.
We've got lots of questions coming in, which are great. Some of them are very quick. I actually think I may be able to answer some of them. So we've got one question about, do you use the same Zoom link for all the different sessions in a day? The answer is yes, correct?
Well, yeah.
Unless it's a specialist class.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so they just need to click on the same link to keep coming back into.
And every teacher has their own Zoom link, and I think there's been a lot of media hype around Zoom as well, which is probably really worth mentioning. Zoom has really upped their game on their security settings. I know of schools in the UK who are not allowed to use it because of the security, but actually they've been incredible in upping their game and making sure that they are safe and secure. What we've done as an added is we've made sure that all girls have to go into the weight room before they are allowed into the class. So the teacher sees every name coming into their classroom, and then actually once the class has started 5 minutes in, and this has been it's been a really good learning curve for parents as well, we lock the class, we shut the classroom, so nobody else can come in. So if they arrive late and they see the class is shut, they'll just go and do an independent activity instead.
Brilliant. And all the girls have their own devices, correct?
They do. To begin with, they didn't, but we got them all out to them, and they all do have a device now.
Yeah, brilliant. A question that will require a little bit more detail. We've just had a couple of people write in to say, could you give a little bit more detail about how you're actually seeing and providing feedback on the students' work and what that process looks like? Is it all the work that they're doing? Is it just particular pieces of work?
So we just ask the girls to send all their work that they are completing throughout the day to us, and it is a lot, but then I think that's what we get in the classroom, so it seems like a lot because it comes via email. Now I've got some girls who haven't emailed me any work, but I guess that's the nature of the situation we're in. I just have to have a high trust model and that they're completing some work, and that a little bit of the onus, I think, is on them to do that. But the work that I've had from the girls, I'm lucky enough to have an iPad and an Apple Pencil. So all I do is, in terms of the technical know-how, I download the photos that they send me. They just send me a photo of whatever work they have. And I use a function called markup in photo editing, which comes with the iPad. And I mark the work, I write feedback, and then obviously I've got the added option of writing a little bit more feedback in the email response to the parent, but I actually address it to the child, so it goes through their parent, and that's how I'm managing to do the marking, and it seems to be working out pretty well. It is challenging. I'm sure the other teachers in here will agree with me, but marking away from students is difficult because you're not able to provide that immediate feedback, which is so critical in our work. But it's the best situation that we can do, I think, given the fact we're in the middle of a pandemic. And that's where I think one of your questions was, someone asked if we had the whole class there the whole time. And we've linking, and with that, we are now doing obviously group sessions, so reading groups and maths groups. So I feel that that's where we're getting the smaller group, the more intensive, and that's where I can provide feedback. And I think that balance is, continually being improved on, but it's the best we're doing at the moment.
And I think as from my perspective as the head of the junior school, my expectations, I know that it's really important that we monitor, we moderate, and we make sure that work is marked and given feedback. But I think we are in a situation where we have to kind of take a breath as well and understand that the conferencing, what's happening, girls are sharing their work in a Zoom session, they're sharing pages, what they're learning and what they're experiencing is new and different. And I think we need to take on board some of these incredible things that technology is offering us, and we don't have to stick to the same program every time. If every child's piece of work isn't formally marked as you may have done in a classroom setting, just as much as we're telling parents not to beat themselves up about doing things, teachers can't either. It's new for you. You are taking on this huge challenge of people seeing you in your own home, and this isn't what you signed up for. So I think it's really important to focus on what's really important, and just having that contact, I think, has proved to be hugely beneficial for our girls in the school. Just being able to see their teacher, they don't have to have a specific piece of feedback that they might get otherwise in a classroom where there's more time. So I wouldn't put too much pressure on yourself with giving too much written feedback.
And I think that's, the girls just love seeing, they send photos of what they've done. I got sent a photo of a student holding a praying mantis and saying it had fallen asleep on her hand. And she was so proud of it. And it was one of those, she'd obviously gone for a walk and, I don't know, one of those real world situations. And she was so thrilled. I put it up on our class blog. And the other girls just love seeing photos of each other and being able to share, as Kerry said, snippets of it. So although I say I am marking each piece of work, it isn't each piece from every student because I'm not getting sent it all. But it's I think the hands-on sharing is equally just as important.
We also have a platform. We have our learning platform, which we call My College. Within our school, where the girls can drop their work into, so similar to Google Classrooms, those sorts of things. So we have a place where they can put all of their work. The younger ones, it's slightly different. We're not using Seesaw, which is an amazing platform that a lot of you do use. So our younger girls actually we're asking them just to send one email at the end of each day, and it doesn't have to be every day if they don't want to, rather than, otherwise you can imagine parents get quite overexcited and they'll send in 3 emails as every piece of work's done. So we've tried to keep it simple, and I think you have to think that way. Keep it simple, keep it user friendly, and the children really have been embracing it. They've really jumped on board, and the beauty with Zoom, if you're not using it, the beauty with Zoom is that we can see their faces, we can see them engaged, we can see when they're switching off, and it's quite easy to then to pull them aside, or tap into them a bit later in a lesson, or even just send them a little email of encouragement. So that's kind of bringing the wellbeing back into it and noticing what's happening on the screen. It's not the same as in a classroom, but it does have its benefits.
Yeah. We've had a question about the level of parental engagement and support that's needed, and can the students do what you're asking them to do without having their parents sit beside them and help them and support them and monitor them?
I think when we plan our activities, it's like having guided reading and then independent reading groups would be a good analogy, in the sense that sometimes when you give an independent reader, it might be, say, a slightly easier text, purely so that you know that they can read it independently and they're understanding what they're reading. To correlate that with the activities, we're supporting the girls' learning. We definitely want them to still be stretching themselves, but bearing in mind we've also got a wide range of abilities in a classroom, and parents are working, busy, they are juggling, everyone's under pressure. So the balancing act is that we've provided activities that we believe the girls can do independently. And the feedback that we've had from our parents, I speak on behalf of Year 3, has been positive, and we haven't had any parents saying, oh my gosh, this is way too hard, and we're having to sit and do it for the girls or anything like that. So I believe that how we've approached it, and of course this is fine-tuning, we're fine-tuning it all the time. Sometimes I'm sure there are activities where we've given them and the parents have gone, oh my goodness, why are they doing this? And other activities where the girls are like, oh, breeze, we've done this in the classroom, we can breeze through it. And we're not going to, like in a classroom, we're not going to get the balance right all the time, but we're trying our hardest to provide a scaffold environment where the girls are extended excuse me, a little bit, but that we believe they can do it independently with minimal adult support, with minimal adult teaching from their parents, that they know that they can lead the session. Ask for help, yes, but they should be able to do it themselves.
And I think from my perspective, again, I keep coming back to it being so new. I've actually had a few coffee mornings with parents where I've invited them into a Zoom session, and I've had all the parents from Year 1 and 2, for example, and then Year 3 and 4, and just kind of talked through. We actually did a survey after the first week just to get a little bit of feedback on how they were feeling it was going for their children, and it was really beneficial because it made them feel important and involved, because all of a sudden they were involved in their children's learning. And some of them, it's human nature, and I'm sure most parents wanted to sit next to them. Quite often we were saying that we'd have an earphone in one of the children's ear, and then the other part of the headphone would go out to mum in the sideline listening into the lesson. But we did say to the parents, please treat this like a classroom. While they're on a Zoom lesson, it is their independent learning. We would expect them in a classroom to be able to independently work through these things, and if they don't grasp it, they can come back, they can ask a friend. Even in that Zoom situation, the amount of peer support they're getting from their friends of how to do things, animation, anything, has been amazing. And parents have backed off, but of course, particularly Year 1 have needed more support than 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think that's natural.
Same in a classroom. The younger year levels do require more support, and I don't know that there's a solution around that, and given the situation we're in. So we're all trying our best, I think.
Yeah, we've had a question about how familiar the students were with the different platforms and tools that you're using prior to lockdown.
Well, funnily enough, my class, our girls in Year 3, we hadn't actually had a chance to use Zoom at all. We actually had grand plans to, practice Zooming the other class and, introduce it. We proposed it to the girls, it's like an umbrella. You carry an umbrella or a raincoat just in case it rains. We're going to carry Zoom around just in case we have to go remote. Well, it happened. But I think the ease with Zoom is that you click on the link and it opens for you. And that's been relatively straightforward. Again, just from the year 3 perspective, we haven't gone fancy with apps, we'll be honest. We haven't tried new and fancy technological things purely because we haven't had a chance to do that with the girls in the classroom. And that is probably asking a little bit too much of them. Some girls have figured out how to do, like what I was talking about, markup before. I've had girls who are like, can I use markup for my activities? I'm like, go for it. They've figured it out themselves. I mean, these kids are so adept at figuring things out. We've sort of opened it up to them using what they want for, if it involves screen time, but mainly, I think we touched on it before, we're really trying to balance them not on the screen the whole time. So good old pen and paper for our year 3s seems to actually be working quite well too.
And I think as the girls have progressed through, the older girls, the year 5 and 6, children are doing a lot more, they're doing animations, they're creating movies, they're, got challenge of creating lockdown parodies. So we're using the environment that they're in and what's happening in the world right now to make sure that they are being creative and are doing different things. And this is all completely new to them. And I'll be honest, the way they're teaching each other is exceptional. And they're learning, they're just, playing around with it and learning themselves. We did have the only thing that they were pretty functional with was our learning platform, which is my college, where they know all of their all the lessons are all planned in there. They knew to go there to get their timetable, to get all of the learning menu. They've got their homepage, a bit like a blog really. So that was their go-to place, and they've been using that for years. So they do know how to use that.
Yes. Yeah. And we'd gone through it with the year 3s before we had gone into lockdown, and also the beautiful screen share function meant that we could pretty much every single lesson and to the end of the term, so it was like 3 weeks worth, we'd still screen share it, say this is my college page, this is how you find it. So it was just that, I think, prioritizing what learning we wanted the girls, and that was where to access the information and the activities.
Yeah. And Kerry, I just want to come back to something you touched on earlier, and that was about the idea of having the Zoom calls with the parents. And I know that communication and engagement with parents has been a really key part of the work that you've been doing. Could you talk to us a little bit about how you've been thinking about that and what sorts of things you've been doing?
Absolutely, and again, this was through talking to schools abroad that had been doing it for 6 weeks before we'd even got into the situation. We've got, as every school has, some really intense parents who want the best for their child, and they want to know what's happening when it's happening, and they want to know before we know how it's happening. So communication has been absolute key for us, and I think they feel comfortable, they feel secure, they feel cared for, and that's really been hugely important, making sure that these parents feel that we care for the situation they're in at home. We do a weekly newsletter that goes out. I've sent sort of little video messages out as well, making sure that they're invited to assemblies if we do them as a Zoom session, so that they can sort of touch in and feel and understand what their girls are doing. The survey that I sent out just had some basic questions about, is the work that your children are doing enough? Is it too little? Is it just right? Is the screen time too much? Is it too little? All these questions that you're asking right now are pretty much the questions that we ask parents. And then I sort of collated it all, and in our coffee morning had a structure to it. And I think that that's really important, having a structure to what you're going to do with parents. It doesn't then become a one for all with loads of questions being hurled at you that you're not ready for. So I had the structure, answering their questions, and just making them feel involved. And I had some really positive feedback saying it's nice to have a voice. The parents feel that they have a voice in what they're doing. I also explained to them in that time things that they probably haven't thought about, because I think you become really insular or egocentric in what's happening in your own child's life. And a lot of these parents were just thinking, oh, I've got to do this at home, I've got to do reading, I've got to do maths, I've got to do French, I've got to do all of these things at home. And so for them just to see the flip side and understand that some of these teachers have never done a Zoom in their life either, and it's hard for teachers, and they're, as much as we're seeing families in their environment, teachers don't particularly want their children to see the painting behind them or what kind of crockery they have. There's all those things that we didn't expect to have to do, and parents had to kind of just take a breath and understand that they had to move their expectations from here to here. And actually, I think generally they've been really impressed with the enthusiasm. We were so well prepared as a staff, and the teachers, I've just been overwhelmed at what the teachers have been willing and are capable of doing collaboratively. It's really exciting to watch. And the most powerful thing, speaking to a lot of the staff in the junior school at St Cuthbert's, is that they want to bring some of these ideas back in to their classroom when we get back to school. And that's really powerful, that we're able to pivot into this new world and then bring it into moving forward when we get back to school.
And I think those the communication from Kerry and the management teams, definitely from a teaching point of view, I've had very little communication questions from parents, things like, what's so-and-so's login, or here's some work, are the only emails I've gotten. And I'm fairly confident that that's due to the clear communication from Kerry and the team just around that. And so that's really alleviated a lot of pressure off teaching staff, and that we don't have to be trying to dodge and answer questions that we might not have the answer to and then refer, more to Kerry or whoever might have the answer. So it's been, that's been a huge help for teaching staff. So we can just focus on the girls and doing the lessons.
Fantastic. And I realise that we are fast coming to the end of our time. But before we go, I just wanted, Kerry, you used the other day a really nice term of talking about triumphs and challenges. And I just wondered if we could end this evening with you talking about what some of your triumphs have been, and also what some of the challenges have been and maybe still are.
I think some real triumphs have actually been as much as the unease or the anxiety around being in your own home and being kind of an open canvas for these families that you didn't expect to be. I think we all often have our defences up as educators, and I think families do as well. Weirdly, I think it's been a triumph. You can kind of understand why little Katie behaves in the way she does when you see what her learning environment's like at home. I think being able to recognise what's happening in the home, and then knowing when they come back to school you can adjust to different situations like that, for me that's been huge. I mentioned the other one of it's been a real win knowing that teachers want to implement, for example, the learning menu, bringing that back into their day-to-day planning and programming. I just think, knowing that this is a memorable moment, I think we have to take on board how special we can make it. I think it's been enormously challenging for so many families and so many teachers, particularly if you've got families at home as well. Just knowing to kind of tone everything down and understand that we're going to look back on this hopefully and think of the good things and the bad things that have happened. So being able to bring those back into the classroom and celebrating what has happened, I think we have to archive it and remember how powerful it's been in the lives of our children. Challenges, one more really amazing thing that has worked, and I think I've been worked in the UK for quite a long time and now back in New Zealand, I think the New Zealand curriculum is just exceptional, and the New Zealand teachers are phenomenal, and watching the creativity that comes with that has been amazing. I do think that has allowed teachers to just kind of pave their own path and do all of these amazing things with their class. what this online learning has done has created incredible collaborations within teams. So I've made sure that well, I haven't actually, the teachers have made sure that across their year groups, so all of year one are following the same program. That way parents aren't judging them, they're not feeling like they're in competition with each other. That's been a hugely powerful thing within the school. Every year group has done their own thing. We've had year 4 teachers come together with their whole year group to get, and one teacher will introduce the lesson, another teacher will then read the BFG to them, and then the third teacher will then set them off on their task and take a breakout group. So watching them collaborate together and work as a team, I think that's been incredible to then bring back into the classroom. The challenges, I guess, and Vic is probably a really good person to talk to this, is, you know, not being able to hug a child if they need a hug. You know somebody's frustrated, and not having that interaction that you might otherwise have if a child's struggling. For me, that's probably been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think just not being able to, you know, being in touch with the students in a real sense. I was going to say, you know, thinking virtual world and versus in your classroom. And also not being able to chase up those girls that might not come into the Zoom lessons we haven't seen much of. That's a little challenging as well. But I have to say, agree with what Kerry said about the triumphs, is that I'm one of those teachers that's really keen to implement, when we get back in the classroom, the home learning menu that we've got, and actually try and reimagine my timetable within our limitations, and use a lot of what we've done in our digital classrooms back in our real classroom, and use this as a really huge, steep, and sometimes scary learning curve, and to become better practitioners in all sense. You've got to know the curriculum deeper, you've got to reimagine activities because you're not there manipulating materials with the kids. You know, you've got to get creative. So I think that's, for me, has been a real triumph, is just that personal reinvigoration and passion for the profession.
Well, on that really positive note, I just want to say thank you both so much for taking the time tonight to talk with us about what it is that you're doing. And I know that for teachers, it can sometimes be really scary to open up your practice to other people. And in a time of huge change, when nothing is like it, you know, used to be, it's a really brave thing to do, to be able to come out and talk about what you're doing. And I just want to say thank you both so much. Lots of really valuable information in what you've been telling us, and I'm sure that everyone who's been listening in this evening is going to take away lots of really valuable lessons. So thank you so much.
Absolutely welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, lovely to share.
Very welcome, and have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you.